Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this special call meeting of the Danville City Commission for this Monday, April the 12th. The hour is 5:30, and I will call us to order. And I will ask that we be led in a moment of prayer by Commissioner Jenny Holland.
Okay. Let us pray. We humbly come before you, Lord, and ask that you guide, guard, and direct our hearts and our motives and our decisions today that we make, that those decisions will be in the best interest of every citizen in Danville. And we pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, ma'am. And we're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner J.H. Atkins.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both. Commission, unless I hear otherwise, I will assume you approve of tonight's agenda. And we'll go right into hear the public. This is the public's opportunity to phone in, email in about any agenda items. There will be a time later in the meeting for similar call to action for items that are not on tonight's agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have anything?
There are no comments.
Okay.
I've been on the phone with the issue. Question my dedication, City. I did get up at 5 a.m. and drive 600 miles so I could be here by the skin of my teeth, but I am here. I even wrote an ordinance on the way home, by the way, in the car.
Is that
I don't believe any of that, but okay.
While I drove, well, I dictated it, and it was ready for me, so.
that's that good sunshine do for
Yes.
you, right?
So does anybody else besides Commissioner Cottle have any comments they'd like to make, or is that it?
I'm just gonna say, I'm glad I wasn't in that car.
Yeah, right.
That played in your band?
Sounds like it
You
was a
out
long trip and he's a little cranky, doesn't it?
What's that?
Sounds like it was a long trip and he's a little cranky, isn't it?
It's just a little short, isn't it?
I watched Toy Story, well, I listened to Toy Story a few times today, too.
Always a good
You need to get the.
All right. We'll try to find our groove here. Item 1 is a proclamation for the National Fair Housing Month. Who's reading that one? Yes, you are. Commissioner Holland, read away.
Whereas the Fair Housing Act enacted on April 11th, 1968, enshrined into federal law the goal of eliminating racial segregation and ending housing discrimination in the United States. And whereas the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination in housing based on race, color, religion, sex, familial status, national origin, and disability, and commits recipients of federal funding to affirmatively further fair housing in their communities. And whereas our social fabric, the economy, health, and environment are strengthened in diverse, inclusive communities. And whereas more than 50 years after the passage of the Fair Housing Act, discrimination persists and many communities remain segregated. And whereas the city of Danville passed an ordinance in June 2014 prohibiting discrimination against individuals based on race, color, religion, national origin, sex, age, familial status, disability, gender identity, and sexual orientation, and creates an administrative procedure for enforcement. And whereas the city of Danville is committed to the mission and intent of Congress to provide fair and equal housing opportunities for all, therefore it be resolved that Mayor G. Michael Peros and the Board of Commissioners of the city of Danville do hereby proclaim the month of April 2021 as National Fair Housing Month, and encourage all private and public entities to provide and advocate for equal housing opportunities for all residents and prospective residents of the city of Danville, Kentucky.
Do I hear a motion to accept?
I move to accept the proclamation for National Fair Housing Month as read.
Thank you, Commissioner Atkins. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Holland. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. National Telecommunications Week.
That would be me. This is the proclamation of the National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services. And whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And whereas the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the Danville-Boyle County 911 Center. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for our police officers, firefighters, and EMS by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information, and ensuring their safety. And whereas public safety telecommunicators of the Danville-Boyle County 911 Center contribute daily to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients in the performance of their jobs. And whereas Danville telecommunicators exhibit compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job. Therefore, be it resolved that Mayor G. Michael Paris and the Board of Commissioners of the City of Danville, on this 12th day of April 2021, declares the week of April 11th through 17th, 2021, as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in Danville-Boyle County, in honor of the women and men whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and citizens safe. And they are here.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Mayor, to accept the National Telecommunications Week proclamation as
Thank
read.
you. Thank you, Mr. Atkins. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cardle. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
I like those T-shirts, by the way. Cool.
I do too. Those are sweet with the little Kentucky and the flag.
Oh, that's great.
Cool.
Too. I'll expect mine in my box.
I just want to thank the commission, all city staff, all agencies we dispatched for supporting us this week. It really means a lot to us, and it's kind of our time to shine. So I really appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Item 3 is the proclamation for National Volunteer Week. Mr. Cardle?
That is me. Make sure I'm good here. Whereas National Volunteer Week is a time to honor that fundamentally American idea that people of different backgrounds, faith, and points of view recognize that despite differences, we are bound together with a common destiny by virtue of being a local citizen of this great nation. And whereas National Volunteer Week is a week that focuses national, state, and local attention on the vital role of citizens serving as volunteers and being an integral part of our civic leadership. And whereas National Volunteer Week is a time to renew that fundamentally American principle of citizen service and responsibility, and also a time to recognize the men, women, and children who put that principle into practice by assisting and strengthening their community through service as citizen volunteers. And whereas many citizens volunteer and serve on a variety of boards and committees for the city of Danville, such as beautification, architectural review, parking, streetscape, sister cities, housing authority, Human Rights, Planning and Zoning, Parks and Recreation, Cemetery, Airport, Economic Development, Ethics Board, Senior Citizens, Tourism, and others. And whereas in recognition thereof, Mayor G. Michael Paris and the Board of Commissioners of the City of Danville hereby declare the week of April 14th through the 24th, 2021 as National Volunteer Week, and urge all residents of Danville to observe this week by volunteering in service projects throughout your city, and join with us during this week to recognize and thanks our many citizen volunteers for their dedication and service to the people of the City of Danville.
Thank you, sir. Do we hear a motion?
Move for approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Atkins, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Item 4, I believe they're out in the hall. This is CASA, Paint the Town Blue campaign.
Thank you all for having us today. My name is Rumonica Gar, and I'm the Volunteer and Community Engagement Coordinator for CASA of the Bluegrass. We're happy today to have with us members of our DCBS office, as well as more of our staff, Gail Wright and Ann Kerball. As court-appointed special advocates, it is our mission to spread awareness of child abuse, dependency, and neglect. We walk with a child through the court system so that every child who has experienced abuse or neglect can be safe, have a permanent home, and the opportunity to thrive. Our team was in awe when Kentucky ranked first in the nation for child abuse for the 3rd year straight. We are so appreciative to the City of Danville for their proclamation that April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. We are committed to ensuring safety and permanency for child victims, and we take our convictions and turn them into action. Just as the City of Danville, our staff, social workers, and family court system, we encourage all citizens willing to volunteer their time to do so. CASA of the Bluegrass is always in search of individuals determined to eradicate this public health pandemic. Throughout the month of April, CASA of the Bluegrass has initiated our Paint the Town Blue campaign, where we nudge local businesses and community members to really highlight the color blue. Planting pinwheels is only a small recognition of a greater cause. This is a visual reminder throughout the month of April, that there is always need for child advocacy and protection. For more information, we encourage everyone to visit our website, casaofthebluegrass.org, or to follow our social media, Facebook in particular, where we are consistently updating information, because we understand that an attack on our children is an attack on our future. Thank you again, City of Danville, for having us and for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
So did you say that Kentucky leads the nation in the number of child abuse cases?
For the 3rd year in a row.
Not the kind of ranking we want.
Exactly.
Right.
I
Do they
appreciate what you
feel-
all do greatly.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Is that more of an indicator because of poverty? Do you know what kind of correlation there might be?
So I will say, I think a great deal of it does correlate with poverty, and also, I would say the maximum issue that we're having in the state would probably be addiction and drug abuse.
That's right.
Yeah.
You want to put a plug in for your training sessions?
I'm sorry?
You want to put a plug in for your training opportunities for new volunteers?
So our training opportunities for new volunteers, you can go onto our website to inquire. When we get your inquiry, we do a thorough background check of individuals. It is an 8-session training for those who are interested in meeting in person. For those who are not, you can actually train online, and it's a 5-module session for that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good to know, thank you.
Thank
I have
you.
another question. How many volunteers do you have?
Currently, so cause of the bluegrass, we advocate for Boyle, Mercer, Anderson, and Franklin counties. I do not have that number at this time. Currently, we do not have enough volunteers for every case, I will say that. So our staff, who are not unpaid volunteers, we supervise every case and try to highlight especially those that do not have a volunteer on them.
I think right now we're a little bit over 70 active volunteers across the four counties served by 3 offices.
Okay. And is this statistic correct that it's just Bull County? There were 176 new cases of child abuse? Was that everywhere or maybe just in Boyle?
I believe that that was just in Boyle. I will
Okay,
say,
that's
if
what it
not, that could be a
said, or neglect.
combination of Boyle and Mercer. Is that from the press release that
Yeah.
you're reading? Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so Boyle and Mercer. And one more question, I'm sorry.
No, you're
How
fine.
are you funded?
So we are funded through state grants. Our biggest grant is the VOCA grant that we submit every year. We also are open to donations. So right now, today is actually our last day to order T-shirts like Gail and Ann are wearing, which are $20 a piece. And where our Paint the Town Blue campaign is our biggest fundraising and awareness campaign. We've also partnered with A Lasting Impression Florist, and we're selling ribbons for $5.
Oh, great, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Used to have a Derby gala, but that got
Yeah, because of
that
COVID.
was a big moneymaker for us.
Yeah.
We're in the second year of not being able to have any public fundraisers.
Thank you all for
Thank you.
what you do. And yes, ma'am, Miss Ann, you got something you want to
No,
say?
I said just, if you'd like to buy a ribbon at $5, paint the town blue.
So how do we purchase a ribbon? Do we go to you guys or do we go directly to the florist?
No, so you'll go to us.
Go to you? And call, come by,
All of the above.
online?
All of the above.
And you are,
Office is 473 Walnut Street across from Charleston Green.
473 Walnut, I'm just repeating it so it's, so everyone can hear.
Walnut Street across from Charleston Green.
473 Walnut Street.
Right.
And we do send out a monthly newsletter, but all of our up-to-date current media is always on our Facebook page.
Okay.
And a Facebook page.
And I will add that both City Commission and Fiscal Court do help with donations and contributions to the COSP organization, so, which we appreciate very much.
We appreciate you, and we appreciate what you do, and we appreciate your time and joining us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5, we have with us Mr. Joe Yee from Louisville, Kentucky, who is with Enterprise.
Yes, thank you.
And we're glad to have you with us, sir, and try to get you out of here and back on the road.
No problem. Yes, thank you very much for having me today. Again, my name is Joe Yee. I think I've met quite a few of you in here. But essentially what I do is I'm a client strategy manager for Enterprise Fleet. I've been with Enterprise, 17 years now. And I've been managing the City of Danville's account since inception, so since we partnered back in 2017. So I'm here. Earl and I met, I don't think it was about a month ago, and he thought it'd be a great idea just to come highlight all the good things we have going on with the fleet. And I was also going to propose something we've been doing with other cities, which is called an early cycle to help reduce budget, and I'll get into that. So yeah, with that, I'm going to get started, unless anybody has any initial questions. So today, I try to keep it brief because I know everybody's time is valuable and you don't want to be here all night. So just wanted to briefly talk about the fleet industry and the enterprise update. Go over your fleet synopsis, so where we were at when we started versus where we're at today. Some financial results so far. And then what I was telling you about the early cycle plan is a 2021 order proposal. Just to touch briefly, and I'll start here. Just wanted to update you guys on all of our government clients throughout the state of Kentucky. Our government clients are the strongest growing segment that we have right now. As you can see, all of our cities, all the way over counties, health departments, you name it, school districts, it's really starting to grow. And we also we're partners with KLC. In fact, we actually do their fleet. They only have a couple vehicles, but they're still through us. Any questions on that? In fact, actually, we just partnered with Bullitt County as well, so that's not on there. So we've got quite a few, and I manage quite a few of those as well. So just to touch on the fleet industry, it's been quite the year, as it is for everyone pretty much with COVID. Manufacturers are, it's a little bit of a mess right now. Manufacturers are shutting off vehicles early. It's difficult to get vehicles right now just because manufacturers shutdowns during COVID. They're not able to produce as many vehicles while the vehicle demand is still very strong out there. So looking at Danville Fleet, when we first partnered, I looked back to see the fleet list, and at the time, there was 92 vehicles. And you can see the segment breakdown there of the categories where they're in. So we had 30 vehicles that were 2005 and older, 1237 between 2015 or 2011, 2015, and we had 13 newer ones in fleet. The average model year age was 2008, and the mileage was 60,400. So fast forward to today, currently we have 108 vehicles. I will say that I picked up titles for 10 police vehicles, so we're going to be selling those. So you can subtract that for now. But you can see now, incredible improvement. Now we have 81 vehicles newer vehicles between 2016 and 2020. And we still have a few stragglers. A lot of those are going to be gone with the police vehicles that we're picking up. And just a handful of vehicles that are older, which is incredible. A lot of those are probably spares vehicles that aren't really used as much. And I'm sure we have a plan to get rid of those eventually here as well. So an incredible, average model years 2016, and the average mileage in fleet is much lower as well. So that does a couple of things. One, makes employees very happy, right? Because new vehicles, everybody feels good about their job. Safety is huge. You can see at the bottom there, some of the major safety components and improvements that come standard with vehicles now. The main thing is electronic stability control. So that keeps your vehicle from flipping over in case of an accident. It's the equivalent of wearing a seatbelt a lot of times. So that is big time improvement. And you can see as you move forward all the standard features that are improved upon as well. Because each year manufacturers are able to add standard safety guidelines across the board. So with newer fleet, safer vehicles, employees are happier. And then maintenance costs and everything like that we'll be able to get into as well. Any questions on that at all? All right. So I tried to keep this high level just because we can get into this nitty-gritty down to the penny, every line item. But just for tonight's sake, I wanted just to show some high-level numbers so you can see kind of where we're trending and what we've done so far. The original annual fleet spend, so that's whenever we first partnered. And when we came together, we said, hey, tell us what your fleet spend was prior to this partnership. What was your maintenance spend? What was your fuel spend? What were you spending on vehicles each year? And you can see, I left the fuel at the bottom because that's variable. We're dependent upon the price of the gas out there today. So the three main components are up top, the vehicle costs, the maintenance. Those are the two big ones. So initially it was 92 vehicles, $255,000, $325 for vehicle purchase, $71,760 for maintenance. And then you can see at the bottom there, the fuel was budgeted for $120,000. So if you break that down without fuel, it's about $3,555 per vehicle. And then if you add fuel, it's $4,870. So as we started getting in each year, you can see the fiscal year 2021 isn't over yet, but you have 2018, 2019, and 2020. You can see our costs are starting to decrease, even with getting new vehicles. It's the power of that open-ended equity lease. And you can see it goes up and then down. That just depends on when we sell our vehicles, how you receive those funds back, and then when the vehicle gets delivered and the lease payments start. Good news is, to sum it up here, is we're seeing better costs and newer fleet. We've done 62 leased vehicles through Enterprise right now. That's how many leased vehicles. So the rest of them are still owned by the city. And then we've sold 46 vehicles for a total net gain of almost $250,000 for you. Then it doesn't include the 10 police vehicles we're getting ready to sell. So good results, especially because a lot of those vehicles, as you saw from the prior slide, were really old, higher mileage. So that's just a real quick breakdown financially. Again, if you want to see anything broken down further, I'm happy to provide that, but just for tonight's sake, I wanted to show you some high-level numbers. Any questions so far?
I got a question about the 46 total for a net gain of 249.
Yes.
That is not saying 46 total for 249,000.
We've sold 46 of the city vehicles as these new lease vehicles came in. We took them to market, we sold them, and then the money that came back from the sale is included in that $249,000.
Okay, so that is net gain, okay.
Net
thank
gain,
you.
yes, absolutely. Okay, any other questions? So this year, I looked into the vehicles that are leased, actually, they're 2017 vehicles. And what we determined was we can actually, we call it cycle out of them, meaning get new vehicles, same trucks, bring them in, get the old trucks, which are the 2017s, and there's a few 2019s in there, and we can actually go sell them. They're worth a lot of money today. The used car market is extremely strong right now. Back to the COVID impacts, we're breaking records right now in the used car market. In fact, if any of you are personally looking for a vehicle, you may find it difficult to find a vehicle, and the prices may be high, especially on used vehicles as well. So it's great for clients that are able to factory order the vehicles and then sell the vehicles. So it's kind of a cool story. What this shows is that, hey, if we were to take these vehicles, order new vehicles, get them exactly the way they were, bring them in, sell the old vehicles, you get the equity back, we can actually reduce the budget. Your total monthly cash outlay, in this case, estimate about, $1,100, $1,140 per month. We're doing this with a lot of cities and counties as well, just because, again, the used car market, people are paying a premium for the secondary use of these vehicles. So these vehicles will be very attractive on the sales market if we did move forward with this plan. Again, it goes back to, governments get extremely great buys on vehicles. And then Enterprise, we sell vehicles very well. As you can imagine, between Enterprise Rent-A-Car and Enterprise Fleet Management, we sell 1.5 million, 2 million vehicles per year. We're very, very good at selling vehicles, and we can get the most back for the trucks as possible. I wanted to show you on the next slide a live example of our friends at Mount Washington. They allowed me to speak to this. But we did this last year. We sold vehicles. We set them up on 12 months. And even though your vehicles aren't set up on 12 months, this is just the theory behind how we do it. As you can see, all these vehicles, we ended up ordering new vehicles about 6 months into them having the new vehicles, and they arrived after a year. We took those older vehicles, we sold them, and you can see the original purchase price there towards the right, and you can see what we went and sold them for. We actually sold them for more than what they originally bought them for. And we actually just did it again. They ordered another round of vehicles, and we anticipate the same thing. Used car market is actually continuing to get stronger as manufacturers are having trouble keeping up with demand. We're finding that these, especially trucks, they're hot on the market right now. So this is a great example, and this is theoretically what we want to do with your fleet as well. Maybe not 1 year, but 2, 3. Every year we run financial analysis on your fleet, and based off of your situation here, I was able to determine that we can do something similar because these trucks are going to be very strong on the used car market. So it's kind of a neat strategy to do. Again, a lot of our government clients have been taking advantage of it because simply, the buy is so good with the government. And I told you I'd keep it short and sweet, but we can get into even more detail. I can talk all night.
Any questions?
I guess mine's more of a comment.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet our short-term
I did.
city manager? And
I did.
I never could understand how you could look at those numbers and come up with the thoughts that he had on this program. He kept talking about we're taking a beating because we don't get the trade-in value on the car. Yes, we do.
We absolutely do.
It goes into the purchase of the new car.
Yes.
And so I don't know if you ever
Yeah.
made any headway with him or not. I'm glad that didn't have to happen, but.
We
it was
met
just-
once and then we didn't meet again.
But I don't see how you can look at that information and not be
Yeah, your
pretty
fleet
impressed. yeah.
performance has been very, very strong. I mean, for the first 3 years of the partnership, we were on point. Just every year, we were coming up with the cycling, targeting vehicles that can make the biggest financial impact for you guys. And then, of course, we took about a year off, but, you know, Earl's done a great job. Earl and his team's done a great job getting everything kind of back going again. And the market is perfect for the fleet your situation's in right now. So that's my whole plan is, hey, let's get new vehicles and reduce budget. That's a win-win for everyone.
So Mount Washington does this on a yearly basis.
They do,
Why?
because they can sell the vehicle for more in 1 year. So effectively, their depreciation is nothing.
Is that something we need to look at?
We can, I tell you what, the 12-month flip that I just showed you about Mount Washington is a relatively new thing that we've been doing because the market's been going, but we can certainly look into that, doing every 12 month. It's more of a preference, right? So whether it's 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, the trucks are still gonna be very, very strongly equitable. When we go sell it, you're gonna get an excellent return back. So it's a personal preference, honestly, because there is a little bit of downtime. The trucks come in, we gotta do the swap, we gotta pick them up. But we can absolutely look into that more if Earl wanted to.
Yeah, in a hot market, I think it makes sense. Now, you get back in a normal market, I'm not sure that 1 year is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for half-ton trucks like you guys run, majority of your vehicles, they're great candidates. Now, if it's a F-350 with a utility bed, we'll probably want to run those 5 years. So each vehicle segment, we're going to look individually. And a dump truck, you know, we may want to do 8 years. So it's just we look at the market every single year. We look and see what's the financial impact we can make per the segment. So it's something we can definitely talk about if you'd rather do 1 year.
Yeah, and that's why you landed on the recommendation this year of
Correct.
flipping the 17, which makes sense. I mean, it's all about the money. That's our preference. You know, we don't, you know, so long as the employees have an operational vehicle that's reliable under pressure during an ice storm. Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's as economical as we can provide that. Right.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Safe
Thank you.
travels
Okay.
back.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Item 6 is the appointment to the Beautification Committee. And that appointment is Evan Teague.
Evan's not that beautiful, I gotta say.
Well, maybe they can help you.
Do I hear?
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Mr. Teague to the Parks and Rec, as a Parks and Rec representative for the Beautification Committee.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Atkins and Commissioner Terry. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Poor Evan.
Item 7 is the approval of the minutes from March 18th, 2 meetings on March 22nd, March 25th, and April 1. At your convenience.
Can we do them as a group? Mr. Dexter?
You may.
I move for approval of the minutes as presented for 318, 322, 322, 325, and 4-1.
Thank you, Commissioner Cottle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 8 is a zone change for 0 South 2nd Street. Mr. Hunter.
Yes, sir. So I'm assuming everyone's got their staff report packet, and so I'll just work off page 1 mostly, and then answer any questions and reference a couple things. This first staff report, let me make sure this is the cities, right? It's the first one? Yes. second.
Yes.
The applicant was the city of Danville, and as you all remember, by resolution, you directed planning commission staff to file that on your behalf, and we kind of did all the legwork here, and then the city manager signed the application and whatnot. But we had a hearing on March 24th, 2021. The applicant was city of Danville, location said 0 South 2nd Street. Property size is 3.4904. That was a recently platted property on the KSD campus. The current future land use map was public. Current zoning was two-family residential RM2, and the proposed zoning, or the request that the city made, was central business, or as we know it, CB. The zoning history is what's interesting on page 1. Both these zone changes are a little different than what you see on the normal basis. These zone changes were what we call inappropriate zoning, where the zoning classification, both applicants felt was not the appropriate zoning, and the requests were reviewed under that consideration as opposed to comprehensive plan compliance, although some of that tied in here a little bit. But the zoning history is what's interesting on page 1. The single-family duplex zoning district used to be called R2, and that was the original zoning for that part of Danville around the KSD campus. That was converted to general residential small lot, or is what we knew as GRB, with the adoption of the 2004 zoning ordinance amendment. Then the property was converted again to two-family, which we now call RM2, with the adoption of the 2020 zoning ordinance amendment. Only thing to note on that, there were some questions why we don't fix the zoning at different times. When we converted the names, we were simply just converting names and terms, but we don't actually go and rezone people's property in a blank. The staff doesn't initiate a zone change to correct these because it's someone else's property. We would need their approval or consent to do what I'd call maybe a housekeeping. You know, we did one for Center, as you remember, we fixed all those properties, but obviously they gave us permission, they signed the application, so no big deal, but at some point in time, it could have been converted to probably the proper zoning, but R2 is what it was. It was KSD's campus, and Walker Hall was there on the corner. And as you all know, it was never a duplex or single-family dwelling that I'm aware of. And the RM2 zoning was just probably done in a blanket fashion back with the original zoning for that part of town. And over time, it could have been converted to something else, probably better suit KSD, but they were exempt anyhow as a state agency. So with that, again, at the bottom of page 1, you can see the application review was that the existing zoning was inappropriate. And somewhere in the staff report, it references what the planning commission has to do. They either have to find that all zone changes or comply with the comprehensive plan, or in absence thereof, have to kind of, the applicant has to demonstrate that the zoning was inappropriate or make a major changes argument. So with that, I'll read the motion that the Planning Commission actually made at the hearing on the 24th. And a motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment based upon the testimony and documents presented in the public hearing. The proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the following items, that it actually was consistent with the goals and objectives, and the applicant has demonstrated the current zoning is inappropriate. They also made a reference that no flume amendment was necessary because the map amendment corrects an error, and the error is the same issue which makes the current zoning inappropriate. The error lies in the face that the predominant existing use and structures were not accounted for in the prior zoning map or zoning ordinance revisions. Further, the application conforms with comprehensive plan guidance for commercial developments, especially regarding the accessibility and minimizing of curb cuts. And the requirement for development plan is waived because the city is not subject to planning and zoning. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is an agreement to adopt a comprehensive plan. And further, I request this motion include a summary of the evidence by the witnesses at the public hearing. The Planning Commission voted 9-0 to forward you all a recommendation to approve. There was some minor discussion about the development plan. This zone change application did not have any conditions or concept plans submitted with it. And it caught the Planning Commission a little off guard. Again, they're used to seeing some type of document. And then it was explained that the city was exempt, and that the city's desire was to probably put some real estate conditions or development options tied into a future sales agreement, as opposed to actually putting conditions on the zone change request. And I'll be glad to answer any questions. Again, the Planning Commission voted 9-0, and there was nobody there in opposition.
Do we hear a motion?
I'll move to approve the zone change recommendation at 0 South 2nd Street.
Thank you, Commissioner Hollins. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Cottle, we are in discussion.
This allows us to begin to put out an RFP or to sell it, and then, but we still have some control about what happens there. Not control, but I don't know a different word.
You've already done the advertisement, and so we will finalize, based on the zone change, the contract, based on the bid that was submitted a couple months ago or a month ago. It's been a little bit, which is why you're not immediately recalling it. We had done that, I forget the exact date, but the advertisement for the disposition of it has already happened. And
Is
so
there
you'll get a
some-
contract of sale where you will establish the terms and conditions of that sale in that contract.
Okay, so that's when we will have the terms and conditions of the property.
That is correct.
Is there a clawback?
There could be, absolutely, yeah. We could include that in the contract if that's what you all want us to do.
Okay.
Good idea, I think. What time frame are we looking at? Just curious.
With the zone change being approved, we should hope to have that maybe even by the 26th meeting. For sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
man. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, Chair will call. Question, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Continue, Mr. Hunter, with the zone change recommendation at 128 Wilderness Road.
Yeah, this was a pretty unique zone change and very interesting, I think. So same meeting, same type of zone change, a request from RM2 to Central Business. The applicant was Steve and Francine Sutherland. The actual property owner is HEA LLC, but that is Steve and Francine Sutherland. And the property that you just heard at 128 Wilderness Road is a commercial structure that's been there for several years. I didn't really know personally what it was, but it was interesting during the planning commission hearing, several recalled talking about a grocery store years and years ago. So just like the prior case, RM2 and the proposed request of Central Business, the zoning history very similar. It was R2. For some reason, that whole part of town was zoned R2. Clearly, there was a commercial structure, so the original zoning could have labeled that commercial or central business. Melton's is actually zoned central business, so you're talking 100 feet away, cat a corner is where the commercial stopped, and that building was labeled as residential. And again, as far as our records, we could tell it had never been a single-family dwelling or a duplex, which is the current zoning. RM2 would be the predominant use, would be a duplex or single-family dwelling. Historically, it had been a commercial use. And so the applicant, again, made the request that the existing zoning was inappropriate. There was a set of conditions and a concept plan submitted with the application, and those conditions are outlined on page 7 of your staff report. Just to pretty much keep this simple, the applicant's intention with the building was simply just to conduct a yoga fitness business. They had indicated to us they'd worked on the building for a number of years, and now their desires to get its own commercial so they can run a yoga studio in that business. And the conditions were very specific to that. You can see yoga fitness limited to 6 persons Monday through Saturday, limited to just yoga. Central Business opens up the door for a lot of different uses. They simply are committing to that. Will be the only use on the property. They made a sign commitment, wall sign only in much smaller square footage that's allowed in the Central Business District. And then they made a commitment on parking. And it's interesting to note, the Central Business does not require a parking standard, but in talking with the applicant, we all thought it was a good idea to try to achieve some dedicated parking to serve the business and to deal with the fact that it is adjacent to a neighborhood. So the applicant committed that they would develop 3 parking spaces to the rear of the building and either have a shared parking agreement or a remote parking agreement prior to occupying the site as a yoga business. What the zoning ordinance allows is for it to do shared parking. If you're within 500 feet, you can have a shared parking arrangement, and they've approached Melton's about that for off-hour parking. Or you can do what's called remote parking, where if there's a parking lot, commercial or multifamily, within 500 feet, you could actually have remote parking, and that count towards your parking number. But again, in this case, they really didn't have a parking standard. But since they were going to have 6 clients and an instructor, we thought a target of 7 parking spaces would be a preferred number to limit any opportunity for it to be on-street parking in such a congested area of the city right there. So the applicant made that commitment that they'd do shared or remote. We're going to leave it up to them to sort of sort that out, but they have to get what's called a change of use permit and a zoning permit if the zoning is successful before they open. And again, they have talked to Melton's, and they're exploring doing a remote parking at a duplex lot that they have at the other end of the alley. That issue did generate some opposition at the hearing. There was a neighbor that showed up that was not in favor of the remote parking or the additional parking area to be developed at the other end of the alley. They said they supported the business and the yoga, they just didn't want to see the parking lot developed off the alley in the remote parking fashion. So with that, the Planning Commission made a motion to approve the zoning map amendment conditioned on the general development plan and the concept plan, and basically made the finding that it's consistent with adopted goals and objectives, and that the applicant demonstrated that the current zoning designation is inappropriate, and then again voted 9-0 to forward to the City Commission a recommendation to approve.
Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve the zone change as recommended by Planning and Zoning at 128 Wilderness Road.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry. Is there a second? Second. Commissioner Holland, thank you. Discussion. Seeing none, Chair will call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Item 10 is Codes Enforcement, Bridget Lester.
Thank you.
Good evening.
That's a real fixer-upper.
For the month of March, we issued 39 business licenses and had 162 inspections and complaints. We removed 3 properties from condemnation. We were able to work with the property owners and removed 511 O'Hara, 350 North Fifth Street, and 164 Duncan Hill. All came off of condemnation. We issued 91 parking citations. Johnny was busy during the month of March. She prepared 40 field reports for the surveyed structure she talked to you about. She submitted the 2021 Certified Local Government Grant that you all approved at the last meeting. And she worked on Preservation Month activities and coordinated those efforts with the Heart of Danville. She also did some consulting with a few other business owners about their properties in the Historic District overlay. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Ms. Lester?
The 3 that came off, is that because they've been fixed up and are inhabitable, or is that because they've been torn down?
No, they're inhabitable. I mean, they've worked with the property owners to get them inhabitable. They haven't been torn down.
Good deal.
All right, I want to go to item 11.
Yes. This is just to inform you, we have gotten quotes for the demolition of 1204 Sycamore Street. And we have a quote for, the lowest quote was $7,100 that we'll be working with that contractor on to demolish that property.
Kind of looks like it's already there.
It's in pretty bad shape. But as you can see from the pictures that I handed out,
Ms. Bridget, what was the amount?
$7,100.
7,000, okay.
Any
So,
questions?
I always ask this question. So we're going to have a vacant lot there. Who will own the vacant lot?
The property
The property
owner
owner will
still
still
will
own the
own it.
vacant lot. So we'll still have our liens.
We'll put a lien on the property. So
Okay.
any sale of that would allow us to recoup our costs plus interest.
Okay. There's just been conversations of some,
We are, the city manager has mentioned some other options that
Okay.
we're looking into for the future, but
okay.
that will take time for us to get those programs going.
You're ahead of me. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Moving right along to item 12. This is Resolution 2021-04-12-01 in respect to our health insurance contracts. Mr. Boyd.
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. For you, we are asking for resolution to approve the contract renewals for the 2021-2022 healthcare plan year. Not a lot of renewals this year because we had a 2-year guarantee with our dental and our vision and our life providers between Delta Dental and Standard. So primarily, we're looking at addendums for our TPA with Trustmark, as well as retaining our medical coverage with Cigna. And then also the addendum to the dependent verification audit. The only one new item that we're including in this year, which is something that I discussed with our broker, and we mentioned that in our presentation, is we are looking to establish a contract with a company called the FIA Group. And basically what that is, that's an outside agency that's based with ERISA-based attorneys, that anytime there's a medical claim appeal, right now the burden of that appeal is put on the plan administrator, which is the city of Danville. And so by putting this with a third party, it indemnifies us from any liability through those medical claim appeal process. If there is a denial by someone and they appeal it, the FIA Group will review it as an independent third party. And inside the language there, they will indemnify us from any fiduciary responsibilities of those claims decisions. And so really, in summary, that's all that we have this year for renewals on our healthcare contracts. And I have provided the contracts for review to our city attorney as well.
Do I hear a motion for the resolution? Thank you, Commissioner Cottle. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Holland. Discussion? Seeing none, Chair will call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 13 is resolution number 2021-04-12-02. This is a proposal for our
Yes, so this is a proposal for an HRS or HR and payroll software solution. Sometimes it's hard to talk about software when you put it in long form, but I'm going to summarize this to the best of my ability, and I'm sure there's going to be some questions on it. So I'm just going to start real quick with just kind of a little history of why we're making a new proposal. So the city's current software provider for payroll and human capital management is Blackbaud, which our software is Financial Edge. Blackbaud staff was informed and notified in late February, that Blackbaud is no longer going to support payroll and HRS systems effective July 31st. And so what that means is the city has to move swiftly to make a change. When we received that news, essentially what we did is we started analyzing and having discussions with Casale. But we also felt the need to put out an RFP for a full solutions for human capital management, and not just payroll. So when we talk about human capital management, we're talking about a applicant and recruiting tracking tool, meaning where applicants can apply online, we can track it, we can do better communication. We have an electronic onboarding platform, which means no paper forms, everything's secure, I-9 compliance as well. And then also beyond the initial hire, it allows us to automate several things. And the biggest thing in there is time and attendance and payroll. And so basically what that means is we can move away from paper timesheets. We can do automated time and attendance. And then also what it does, it improves your efficiency on payroll because everything becomes automated and your payroll accuracy increases, but also your payroll labor time decreases. And so there's other things in here that we looked at too, is, another thing that the city really needs, and we talked about this during the compensation presentation, is about performance management. And, looking at a good merit program, well, by going with another vendor, it allows us to establish a good performance management tool that the managers can use to gauge their staff. And then it also provides us with a solution for the employees to better service them, where they'll have an employee portal where they can see all their information, such as their tax information, their direct deposit, their, vacation and sick accruals. But what it also does, it allows them to self-manage those, meaning if they want to make a change, they can do it automated through that. So, in essence, what it does, it eliminates paper pushing in a way, but it also helps us meet KRS statutes for safeguarding and records retention, which is another key thing for us that we want to basically move forward on. So that is just an overview of what the platform we looked at. So now, once we looked at our needs, we put out an RFP, but we also engaged, like I said, we engaged with Cassell. And through the process, Cassell is a great software. It is, its core functionality is for accounting and utilities, and they'll even stated, HR is not their core functionality. It's a great platform, but when we talked with them, unfortunately, they couldn't meet the deadline of the July timeframe, and so that really impacted us with our RFP. So when we put out RFP, we had three companies respond. Two of them I was familiar with, and just working with HRS conversions in the past, which is ADP, Paylocity, and then the third one was Paycor. When we looked at the RFPs, we did accept two of the three based on meeting the requirements of the initial RFP requirements, which was ADP and Paylocity. And so when we got down to it, we looked at those two vendors very closely, and we really ranked them on several different things. One, obviously cost. Two, technical support is really a big thing for us. We need to have a better vendor that has more knowledge sharing as people moving in and out of roles with the city, transparency of information, which, we are lacking in that, and that is something that we're striving to improve on with this. The other thing, of course, was implementation abilities. They have to be able to convert all of our historical data from our current system and also be able to meet the implementation timeframe. Unfortunately, we're in a very short window, and we have to have a contract in place by the 1st of May in order to make sure we have a payroll solution, because it's going to take us about 8 to 12 weeks to really roll up our sleeves and get this done. And so when we looked at the two, along with vendor references, we really felt like Paylocity was our vendor of choice. Now, with the cost, yes, the initial cost with Cassell would have been about $20,000. Here, you're looking at $57,000, but what you get is a guarantee that you're going to not have a break in payroll, obviously, which we can't have. But what also you do is you improve efficiency through automated payroll. So, for example, they will automate. This vendor takes on a lot of responsibility for you with completing your payroll, submitting your deposits to the banks automatically, which is a manual transaction for us now. It also automates and does your tax filings, your per pay period, your quarterly 941s. Those are all automated and done by the vendor. Also, same thing with your year-end filings when it comes to your W-2s, your 1095s. And so what it does, it just allows us to improve our accuracy and efficiency. So those cost increases the benefits far outweigh the cost, and additional costs that we're going to incur. And on top of that, this is a cloud-based platform. Paylocity is a national organization, and they're guaranteed safeguard of your records, so it protects that in a cloud-based platform. And it is something that, for us to move forward from the HR side, is really needed.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll move for approval of Resolution 2021-04-1202.
Thank you, Commissioner Cottle. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Atkins, thank you, sir. Discussion? Nicely done, sir.
All right, thank you.
All in favor? I'll call the question. You got anything? Call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Randy, I know you've worked really hard on both of these things for over a year now, and I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate all the support, and it's all positive for the city as a whole. So,
Good, thank you.
Item 14 is the first reading of ordinance number 1964. This is the Entertainment Destination Center. Is Lester?
That one needs to be tabled until next week, and that is on me, not Ms. Lester. Thank you.
That works.
I'm not going to say anything, Stephen. I'm going to let that go.
Thank you, Commissioner.
No, that's, I'm not going to let Steve do that. It's probably on me as, also. So there's, just, we'll continue to work on that. We have a plan. We just want to make sure we do it correctly, and so we don't have, undue pressure right now. The process, once you pass the ordinance, will take a while. And so May is really our deadline for it anyway, so we have 2 more weeks to wait. So we'll do it we'll recommend it on the 26th.
Okay. Well, I had some questions, so I'll wait.
Then we'll move into item 15, which is ordinance number 1963. You may want to make note of that. This is the Lancaster Road zone change. Please, thank you.
This is the first reading of ordinance number 1963, an ordinance changing the zone from AG Agriculture and HB Highway Business to LI Light Industrial for approximately 30.765 acres, more or less, of real property located at 1695 Lancaster Road in the city of Danville.
Well, for discussion purposes, I'll make a motion that we approve that ordinance as read.
We have a motion by Commissioner Cottle. Is there a second? Commissioner Holland has made a second. We are in discussion.
Well, I can, since Mike missed last time, I could share my thoughts
Sure.
from earlier. And also, I think Earl and Engineering had brought up some concerns, and I have a lot of respect for them as well. But, according to state law, I think I read it last time, to approve a zone change, it has to be, consistent with the flume and consistent with the adopted goals and objectives. And then the second item is that a developer must follow our zoning ordinance and follow all the processes there. And the zoning commission, voted 7-0 in favor. I think engineering had some concerns about water sewer once again. And once again, I guess I was kind of pointing out that that's right now, according to our processes, part of the site plan stage, and conditions can definitely be put at site plan stage. So something to consider.
Earl, you want to share any thoughts?
No, to be clear, to restate various conversations I've had, is that the zone change in front of you really is you're trying to decide what items are being addressed when you consider a zone change of this magnitude. Unique to the zone change that just happened on Wilderness Road, you passed a zone change on a small lot downtown, and you considered as a condition of the zone change all the way down to the size of the sign, correct? So we just talked about the size of a sign in approving the zone change. There's a sign ordinance that details what that is. In this zone change in front of you, you have a large tract of land that is being rezoned to light industrial. And what engineering, when we asked staff to look at it, his memo that he brought out, which was the last page of your packet, are that these things identified in a traditional zone change, and it's not in this packet, I don't think. I think it was in the last one. But the things that you consider traditionally in a zone change aren't necessarily covered in the conditions that are presented so far. And so we just want to make sure that that's properly considered by the commission. And you all, in making the decision on how to handle that, are those types of conditions adequate to address all the needs identified in the comp plan? Traditionally, there's been examples where you handle those as conditions up front. And those are two different levels of views. You have a view that is, do you connect the development? Do you extend water and sewer or utilities? I think it's the comprehensive plan mentions it. Even on the handout that is provided on page 10 of the PDF that I'm looking at, it says under guidance for industrial development, this is in your packet. At the bottom of the page, it says 8, but it's page 10 of my PDF. It talks about water, electric, gas, sewer facilities in sufficient scale or quantity should be a prerequisite for an industrial use. And so that question has always been answered as a condition of the zone change. And so those conditions don't exist in this zone change, right? It's a broad statement of agrees to a building area size, agrees to the overall use of the property being consistent with the zone, and applicant agrees that the portion of the property shall have one direct access point during construction. Those are the conditions. And so the question at hand is do you pass the zone change as it's presented with the conditions that are presented, or do you feel like additional conditions are necessary to confirm traditional compliance with the comp plan?
Can we do those without having another hearing, Stephen, or?
You cannot.
Okay.
The only time in which you can add conditions are during the hearing process itself.
Okay, thank you.
But with the new, I guess, processes and these things, already to be addressed at the site plan level, I guess, are you changing your mind about the processes and the zoning ordinance the city has approved?
The question is do you all want the process changed? And so on one hand, the zone change before this, you have a detail of a sign dimension that is a condition of the zone change. This 40-acre tract, you have very little or limited description on what can even happen there, although we're acknowledging that it's a distillery operation in the text. So we just want to, again, confirm that what level of detail is necessary to support a zone change, especially a zone change of this magnitude. 30-acre tract is equivalent to the entire parcel that was approved for the Lowe's development on the south side of town. So this is not an insignificant parcel of land. It's not just a single lot on the east side of town. And we just want to make sure that the conversation is adequate and that we are actually ratifying a policy that you all intend to ratify, if that makes sense.
And that's where I've been uncomfortable with it is literally just minutes ago, we talked about specific conditions and signage and parking spaces on a small piece of property that is going to have little impact. But yet, we've essentially written a blank check to something that's 40 acres that, in my mind, essentially has no conditions. And it says here, guidance for industrial development, but the first bullet point says a detailed traffic impact study must be submitted on any industrial development that would generate traffic greater than 500 average daily trips and 100 vehicles per hour. And maybe if there's just a rick house there, that's not going to happen, but that's not
Well,
the
and
plan.
again, in that analysis, it's best to not use the specific intended use, but you have to consider all uses that would be allowable under that zone change. So it's conceivable that the proposed use does not come to fruition. So it's also incumbent upon you to think about, well, if other intended uses were available on that property, what would it look like? So
Right.
it's possible for an unintended use that does comply with light industrial to maybe purchase the property in the future or be a different use that would fall within that category, yet there would not be, as it exists today, those conditions that you describe.
Earl, if a housing developer came in and said, I want to do 30 acres, and I want to put houses there, well, would we do it this way? Or what have we done in the past?
I've seen it done differently in the past, and I just want to make sure, again, that we understand how you want to do it as we go forward.
I want to do it the best way, in the best interest of the community, and that also means the taxpayers and the citizens.
Correct, and so your goal with planning and zoning is to protect everybody else also. It's to protect, so the intent is for the community to decide how they want the community to grow, and you all are elected to make that final decision. And so so there's two views. There's the 20,000-foot view that is the comp plan, that is, you consider water and sewer before a zone change. Now, you can later decide, and traditionally, we have decided at the site plan level how it's being served. Is it a pump station? Is it gravity? Is it an 8-inch line? Is it a 6-inch line? Those are typically nuances at the site plan level or where is access, specific access coming to the property? Is it from Lancaster Road? Is it from the David Avenue area? So which one is it? And so those things are typically addressed at the site plan level. That is correct. The broader discussion of, does this development require structural improvements to your roadway system? And do you agree to make those improvements if necessary? Those are usually conditions of your zone change, as evidenced by, for example, the Lowe's development is the easiest one to point to.
We've already done this specific to rick houses and distillery operations, correct?
The distilleries on Lebanon Road, for example, were handled by developer agreement prior to, or at least in conjunction with the zone changes, and the industrial foundation took care of those potential conditions. And so I'm not aware that those had zone conditions on those, but you had a developer agreement in hand at the time to account for those potential conditions, so that none would be on those properties, in my opinion.
As the conditions were met before the sale of the
There was
property.
clear resolution to potential issues prior to.
So to move this issue forward, we have a motion and a second. I guess I'm going to ask my city attorney to direct me how to get the motion off the floor, because it seems that from the discussions, we're headed toward a public hearing with city staff and the commission having a chance to to do more actual in-depth looking and study at this proposal. So how do I do that? Get him to read it.
So,
Somebody would have to take the second off the table.
well.
Or you have voted down.
Or
Or
do
you
we
vote.
just need to
Or
vote?
You vote, you could vote on it, would be one way. And then if the first reading is denied, then, or not successful rather, then someone could make a motion to either deny it or to have a rehearing. Now,
And denying the first reading doesn't kill the project at this time, does it?
no, it just doesn't approve it today. I will say this as a real life example. The last rehearing that I can recall involved a piece of property. It's a slender piece of property next to the Valvoline instant oil change on Houstonville Road or 4th Street, whatever it is, right in there. And if you'll remember, the Planning Commission forwarded to this body a recommendation for its rezoning. I don't remember what it was prior, but it was going to allow some use to be, my memory is some type of car lot or something
car
of
lot.
that nature. At the presentation of the recommendation, there was objections from property owners for various reasons, and the record, I will say respectfully, was light in addressing concerns that were raised that were also shared by the commission. In that instance, the commission decided to have a rehearing, not because the zone wasn't appropriate, but because the conditions lacked the gravity to meet the concerns that they shared. So a rehearing was held, and that is where there were conditions, if I recall right, for additional landscaping buffering, again, which are administrative and could have been done at site plan. Lighting concerns, the neighbors were concerned, particularly of excessive lighting, and so we got into those details and added those conditions, again, which could have been addressed at site plan if approved, but the commission wanted them to be required at that standpoint. So there is some history supporting conditions, even though they are prescribed by ordinance or allowed in other ways. There is somewhat, well, I would say, a healthy dose of discretion at site plan or anywhere else, which would then leave staff to either try to assert itself at site plan or technical review or through enforcement measures. So the question is, from a policy perspective, where are those best addressed?
If we move toward another public hearing, explain the time frame to us.
Sure, so that therein lies the second problem. If you wanted to have a rehearing, the rule is that you have to take final action within 90 days of the recommendation of the Planning Commission. That is set to expire at the end of this month. You have to give 14 days notice to adjacent property owners for the meeting. So if notices went out tomorrow, that means you could have a hearing on the 27th. You would have to have a first reading on the 27th and possibly a second reading on the 28th to get it done in time. So you're talking about a very tight window of opportunity to get it done. You could also deny the recommendation or request the developer to withdraw it and reapply. And in your resolution to do so could say that you make a request that the Planning Commission address whatever it is you so desire, if it's reheard. I'm trying to be creative in that.
Sure, that's right, yeah.
Because I don't know that for at least my gauge of your conversation is that you don't dispute that the zone change is inappropriate, but you have issues with the underlying record. Now, that to me is a separate issue in and of itself, which does necessitate some review. And perhaps the questions that you have today would be best addressed by a text amendment to the zoning ordinance that would set your expectations of what the record should contain when it is forwarded to you. Right now, you have basically a letter from the planning director as well as a staff report. But what you could say is we have an expectation that the record will consist of the following: the application, draft minutes, staff proposal, and anything else that's submitted the day of the hearing, right? So you would have actually a full, complete administrative record. I'm not sure that you actually have that at this point. You would have to put the minutes in there. You would have to, and the minutes should be specific to, what testimony was provided. I don't recall if any testimony was even given in this case or not.
Yeah, from our understanding, there's not strong, quote-unquote, opposition to it. No one's necessarily standing there saying that the land use is negative or land use negatively impacts the area per se. But I think what is, the questions at hand do represent a greater understanding of how do we want our zone changes to look? And, you know, that can be addressed in 2 or 3 different ways. You can, and I've said this, and you can take the ordinance as it sits and pass it, but direct us to do something different or provide comments to planning and zoning. Or you could try to have an expeditious hearing as quickly as you can to address the concerns that are vacant in the record and conditions. Or you could take the third approach, which is to ask the developer to withdraw it and resubmit it or deny it.
Well, let me spitball here for a minute. As I agree with you, it doesn't seem anybody's opposed to the change of the zoning and the use that's planned. So it comes down to these infrastructure things more or less, I guess, right? Primarily. And you mentioned something called a developer agreement. Is that an actual thing, or is that just sort of a?
No, that's spelled out in the ordinance, yes. Yeah, so you have an agreement with, an active agreement with Center Estates currently on the south end where Asuka is being installed. You have a developer agreement with the Industrial Foundation at IJW. Those exist with us, with the city already.
Could that be done in this case rather than in avoid, trying to save the time if we're all going to head to the same conclusion?
Yeah, and that's not unreasonable. But yeah, we could make an attempt to negotiate with an agreement with the developer between now and the second reading. You could do that.
I definitely think we need to be protected, and the things that you have concerns over need to be addressed, and we shouldn't do anything differently for them than we do for anybody else. But, you know, if there's a way we can do it without doing the second hearing, then.
But is that changing the conditions? If we,
Typically, your developer agreement addresses what is approved at your site plan, right? I mean, it's going to include.
Or what would be approved.
Or what would be approved at the site plan. I don't know that the developer agreement occurs pre-zone change. It typically addresses infrastructure, but it does it after technical review and site plan. And those, you wouldn't enter into an agreement with a developer prior to the zone change being in effect.
But
So
we could-
we would be early in the game. I mean, they could in theory agree to put those in a developer agreement now. But it wouldn't be like the correct
Yeah, I was
process
thinking
for it.
I don't want it to
Bergen
be
Road.
wrapped up tight. I wouldn't want it to be
Yeah.
vague or.
and Steve used a word from the other zone change that we just saw, and that was commitment. And that comes from both sides. So we're committed to the citizens and to the developer and to, you know, what we think is best. And I'd like to see that on this one from the developer as well.
Well, if we're trying to look at this from a risk perspective, you want to know, quantify what the city's risk is.
Right.
So let me just, I'm not saying this would happen, but let's just say, look at another alternative situation. The intended use that applicant has sought is for rick houses. However, this is a 30-acre zone change. Under light industrial, it's conceivable that you could put distillery operations on 30 acres. So let's just say the plan changes, and it's not rick houses. But under the zone of light industrial, an actual distillery is built there. Under that situation, in theory, you could have a new distillery located without a traffic study, without infrastructure needs addressed, and all in the zone and allowed as an administrative right. Now, in theory, those would hopefully be addressed at technical review and through additional measures, but this commission wouldn't have review of them. they would be purely in the hands of the planning commission at that point, and staff.
So our engineering department doesn't,
They participate in technical review, certainly, and can voice what their requirements would be to approve certain plans. And, but the goal would be to get as many of those things addressed ahead of time, obviously, is what the goal would be.
But that's my concern. It is, we've just opened it up for a full-on distillery operation without any sort of,
Well, any light industrial use. I mean, any light industrial use.
which leads me to the greater issue of, I believe we need to have specific conditions and regulations for distillery operations. So that's another conversation
For another day.
for another day. But that's where I'm headed with this whole conversation. I think well, I don't know what I think.
I'm not worried about the time frame. I'm worried about getting it right.
Yeah,
I'm worried about getting it right, and I'm also worried about precedent. We have, to my knowledge, we've never done it this way.
but there is a precedent for rig houses and distillery operations. And we're not doing it that way
Yeah.
this time.
But if we want
And
to
that's not good.
If we want to, if the commission and the staff want to have other input before the zone change takes place, the only way for us to do that is to have a hearing.
I guess that's my question. Is that the only way to do it?
It is.
And regardless of the time frame, to me, the rush on the time frame really gives us a chance to take care of the community, but also gives the applicant a chance to get some major work done this summer, this fall, or whenever, but if it's approved. So this guy's been working on this thing since January, you know, and so I
So,
refer to both.
so we don't want to wait for the site plan to do this, I guess? I guess that's the decision everybody's making.
Yeah.
Don't wait to site plan, because you can put conditions on a site plan. Engineers can be at the site plan. It could be handled there, but I'm hearing we want to change the process. Is it appropriate to change the process right in the middle of somebody's zone change? I guess that's our decision. I just don't want to treat people differently, that's all. IJW had 0 conditions on their rick house. And like I said, I've been in hearings where there was 0 conditions before, so. And that's another rick house. I even called an employee over there and talked to some management just to confirm it was true. And so I just don't want to treat different developers differently, that's all. But we want it to be right.
Right.
I guess, do we think we're wiser than engineering at the site plan level? I don't think we are, but
Not at the
You
site
know.
plan, but we do represent the citizens. We do represent the people. And I appreciate your point. I could also argue it the other way that we're treating this one differently than we have others in the past. Now, we haven't had 30 acres like this. But we're treating this one differently, and I'm concerned about the next person that comes through and says, by golly, you did theirs this way. How come you're making me go back and do it the way we used to?
But,
Yeah.
I mean, when Lowe's developed, there were a laundry list of conditions, is that correct?
That's our understanding, and that's how.
And this is
the-
basically the equivalent acreage of a
Yes.
Lowe's.
right. So our standards have changed. I mean, 2 years ago, you approved a new zoning ordinance, new standards, new approaches, and I'm hearing that's not what we want. But it didn't happen before because you had a different zoning ordinance. And what's happening now is in line with, at my understanding, our zoning ordinance now that was approved by this commission 2 years ago. And I did read it. I don't know if anybody else has read it. And I've read KRS 100, which is all of planning and zoning. And I just don't think we're smarter than the planning commission. But You know, if there's concerns, it's okay. I'm for whatever you guys, want
Well,
to
if-
do. I just don't want to treat people
Yeah,
differently.
We're talking about what? 2 weeks and 2 days? If that gets us where we're all comfortable and good, to me, that's a good 2 weeks and 2 days.
Can it be done adequately, that quickly?
I'm
Yes.
trying to do a quick count on my calendar while we're watching this conversation, or I'm listening to the conversation. The 90 days is either going to run on the 27th or the 28th. So if it runs on the 27th, and I need to check it twice because I don't feel comfortable just saying that because I'm counting quickly. If it runs on the 27th, you don't have time to have a second hearing. If you send out notices tomorrow is the 13th, add 14 to it, you're already at the 27th. You couldn't have the hearing before the 27th, and you can't have 2 readings of an ordinance on the 27th. It would take until the 28th to approve it at the earliest, and if you don't take final action prior to the expiration of the 90 days, then the recommendation of planning and zoning is approved. So therefore, at this time, I think your choices are simply to approve it without conditions, and then address whatever concerns you have with the planning and zoning process and underlying record in another day, or you deny it today, or you could table it again and ask the developer to withdraw the application, and maybe resubmit it, and hopefully the planning commission would address the concerns that you've discussed today. I think that's where you are today. I
Does
think
that start the 90 days over?
if they withdraw it, then the process is complete. That file is closed. And then they could
And then
resubmit an application
Reapply and have another 90 days?
and have another hearing. No,
Another
but the
hearing.
planning commission would have the hearing and could potentially address the concerns that you've aired today and for the previous, weeks. Let me say this too. We are somewhat behind the 8 ball in the fact that when you first addressed this issue in your first meeting in February, you didn't have the full record, obviously, because the planning commission hadn't approved the minutes yet. It's my preference that you have the full record prior to making your decision on things that you want to have more thought about. Because if I were in your shoes, I would have an expectation that I see the application, that I see the minutes, and that I read them myself and digest them, as opposed to just having a staff summary prepared for you. That's part of it. But you need to have the full record before you, because this is an administrative hearing,
But
so to speak.
prior to 2018, the minutes were done in transcript form. So we still don't have the full record, which is another conversation.
Well,
We don't get the minutes in the same form that we did.
they used to be written minutes.
Right.
They were
Word for word.
transcript style. You
Right.
had everybody who was in favor of their name, what they said,
Well,
everybody
and
who
you could
was
have that
objection.
type of
We-
detailed prescribed, I'm saying, through a text amendment. If that's what you want or have an expectation for, then you can amend
Because-
the underlying ordinance to
Because
require.
even when we receive the minutes as the record, it's still not the full record. So
Right.
without going back
True.
and watching the video,
But
we don't
think right
have the
now
full
we're-
record.
We're discussing a whole lot of things
Yeah.
that really don't have X, Y, and Z to do with this developer and this project.
Well, I'm not going to withdraw my motion. We're going to vote
Yeah.
up or down and see
Yeah.
how it goes.
'Cause I don't
Yeah.
think.
And there are conditions, because there's 3 on page 3. So I heard there's no conditions, so I just wanted to make sure there's understanding. There are conditions.
Yeah,
there are
they're-
conditions,
Just not
but
as
they're
many
very
as everybody wants.
vague.
And doesn't want engineering to decide later, so.
Yeah, you can say it like this too, Commissioner Holland. What you're saying when you're talking about asking engineering, by doing it on the front side, you're confirming for engineering what they should be doing during that site plan process, which is what we've always had happen.
Right.
we've
I'd like to
always-
go back to that.
Right,
It's
we
not
have
there right
always
now,
had
but-
that
18.
clear direction on what the expectation is.
Yeah.
And so that when the city staff is sitting, working with the developer, they have actual standing to tell the developer what to do, right, fully. And so, you know, that, just as long as we know that distinction, right? There's a
Right.
nuance to that. It's not as simple as, you know, what I've heard, some
And it's-
things I've heard tossed around.
And that's what
not
it's
that
about, is clear direction, and
simple.
there's not clear direction here.
So,
If this passes tonight, then can I guess us, rely on staff at some point in this process to get some of these concerns before the developer? I think what people are saying is that if they're in the process before the zone is approved, they've already been agreed upon. And if, based on how we vote tonight, then we have to get them put in after the zone has been changed.
that's right, you'd have to get them through technical review.
Yeah.
Which
And
is
I-
the
And
new
so using
process.
the prior example, for instance, you would have, your ordinance requires there to be sufficient landscape buffer and, you know, adequate lighting. Those are generalized terms, right? So in the instance that we talked about, the zone change on Fourth Street, there was sufficient, there was a very clear direction that the commission gave on the conditions regarding what that landscape buffer should be and how the lighting should be limited, which staff then had authority to either approve at technical review or not. You are leaving it to discretion of staff. You just need to know that.
Exactly, yeah, I think
and-
that's better
yeah.
said, right.
You are leaving the condition, or the implementation of certain ordinances to staff to either require or not require, and may or may not be sufficient to you. And that's okay, but again, we're just delineating what you are doing today, which is our job. It's your job to make the choice. It's our job to lay it out for you.
Could you still do the development agreement at the site plan stage if you feel like you need that muscle to help the engineers?
The site development agreements with the
advance.
planning commission. And they can certainly do that if staff thinks it's necessary and parties agree.
So, trying to get us to yes. So if we voted this down, could we then go back to the developer and say, we want to put a developer's agreement together? And then,
That wouldn't, no, you could not do that
vote yes
at this
to
juncture.
okay.
At this juncture, you couldn't.
But what if he says, no, I don't want to do a developer agreement?
What do you say we can't do?
What if the developer doesn't want to agree to that? What happens?
Well, you could, if the plan isn't approved, if the site plan isn't approved, the site plan does have to be signed off by the city. And so, not you, but by staff. And if it is signed, then it is approved. If signature is withheld, then obviously it's not approved.
But who is determining what would be in that developer agreement?
Your city engineer would be at the table when it is developed. Or if he espoused an issue that had to be addressed and said that he would withhold his signature without it being addressed, then obviously it would have to be addressed. And if the site plan ultimately wasn't approved, then that would be an appealable action that the developer would have. So they approved my zone change, but they didn't approve my site plan, and this is why, and that kind of thing.
Right, so not only
That's
the
why if you
planning-
alleviate some of those things, if in the future,
In the
some of these
future, yeah.
conditions are addressed at the zone change level.
So are you going to work on a zone change text amendment for, I guess, future cases?
I think the city engineer is in the middle of conducting kind of a comprehensive review and going to have maybe areas of concern or potential areas of revision that will be proposed to you at some point.
All right, my last and final question. If this is voted down tonight, the developer could have the option of withdrawing it or forcing us into a second reading, and if it gets voted down a second time, then the project is dead and he cannot resubmit for a certain period of time?
That's correct.
What is that period of time?
2 years.
Wow, see, I don't think that's fair. Yeah. Oof, what do we advise?
Yeah.
That's if he would, if it's not. Your next meeting is on the 26th. So I think your options are this, just to put them back on the table. You either have a first reading tonight, or you, and it passes, and then you can have your second reading on the 22nd. Or it fails tonight, and you could leave it alone and see if the developer would withdraw his application and then maybe resubmit it. I don't think you have time to have a rehearing.
Do we need to make that known if it were to be denied, if this does not pass tonight? Or do we need to amend a motion of some sort to ask the developer to resubmit? How would we get to that?
Well, we can't require him to do that. He would have to do that strategically by his own decision-making process.
Okay.
You either need to approve it as it is today, based upon the record in front of you, and in concert with the recommendation of the Planning Commission, or you would deny it on the basis that the conditions you think are insufficient because they fail to address whatever you decide.
And if it's approved, then we're putting the staff on notice to get the concerns of.
Addressed at site plan, that's correct.
Right, which is
Technical
how it was
review.
set up 2 years ago to do it like that. So,
And we approved
but
it.
I guess we
Yeah.
decide if we want that or not.
No,
Well, and I agree with you, Commissioner, but at the same time, we also have, like in your packet tonight, I mean, we have a zone change ordinance recommendation that addresses signage, which we have a whole ordinance that deals on signage. So we're limiting one business to one sign when our ordinance would allow more signs. You see, and that's a perfect example that City Manager pointed to. Our ordinance will typically allow up to 3 signs for a commercial business. The zone change ordinance specifically conditions for that property on Wilderness Road to 1 wall sign. Because for whatever reason, good or bad or ugly, they felt it necessary to do so. So it's not uncommon, even under the new system, to place conditions even more restrictive or than our current ordinances allow. Because it provided direction for whatever, because it could be a distraction, too close to right-of-way, I don't know, doesn't necessarily matter, but I'm just saying, even in the new process, it's not uncommon to add more restrictive conditions than what ordinance would allow, because that's what their purview is to do that.
And the goal is to have a good process, right?
Right.
And so
there's a
if
bump
you,
in it
if you
right
have a
now.
process that, where you have a variation on what the standard, do you need to revisit and just verify what your process is, right? Like, it was changed in 2017, so it theoretically could be changed again, and it was changed prior to 2017. So it's a dynamic, planning and zoning is a dynamic system anyway.
That's a good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we can tweak it how we need to.
Sure.
And that's,
But-
you know, what Mr. Dexter is saying is exactly how I feel. It's like, well, we're putting all these conditions on these smaller properties that are very specific to signage and landscape and buffering, but yet we take a large tract and don't even talk about that and don't even require any of that. And that is so inconsistent to me.
Yeah, we've never, as far as I know, it's never been done that way.
Well, and don't misinterpret, please, my comments. I'm simply stating them for the record that it is appropriate, even since the ordinance has been revised, that the Planning Commission can add conditions that are more restrictive than our ordinances allow. And I just cited that as an example. I'm not trying to proffer any opinion on the zone change request in front of you, merely that it is possible to do it, and we've done it before, and you can do it again. That's my only point
Right.
in that.
And we have done it before, and we did it on the Perryville Road, almost 30 acres.
Yeah, and so what we've tried to do is consolidate what we're hearing and trying to identify why we're hearing so many things and feedback that we're getting, why it's so wide and varied. It's because, our process probably could be revisited and make sure that the process accomplishes what is intended. And that, that's what we can observe and what we communicate back to you as a collective board. That's what we would suggest. We think you need to do that then, because collectively, we're hearing that, and we're hearing what questions, and so that's really at the core of the questions is our process robust enough to enforce the comp plan? Is that really what's happening? I don't, we can look at that, though.
And I think it's safe to say that our process that planning and zoning has attempted to follow is the process that this commission approved. We've sort of set the scale, the guidelines for planning and zoning, and the conditions in something that's gotten to our desk, most of those conditions have been put in by planning and zoning, not necessarily by the commission members. If I remember correctly, it's the first time I think I've been asked or had a discussion about us adding conditions into a project, except for the Valvoline one. Maybe the only other one I remember us being asked.
I'm gonna call a question.
You do what?
Call a question.
All right.
Okay.
I'll take your spot.
Question's been called, and I think in this case, we need to have a vote on the question, because there may be still some chatter.
Okay, that's fine.
All in favor of calling the question,
I have to
say
do roll
aye.
call.
No, this is for the motion to call the question.
Oh, sorry.
All in favor of calling the question, say aye.
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 There
Passes.
you go. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Caudle,
Yes.
Commissioner Terry,
No.
Mayor Paris.
No.
Commissioner Holland,
Yes.
Commissioner Atkins.
I'm going to vote no tonight.
So what do we do
So
now?
my next question to you is, do you want staff to explore the possibility of having the applicant withdraw the application? Or do you want to schedule a rehearing?
What would be faster for the applicant so they're, don't have their project so far behind?
I don't know the next date of the planning, let's see.
It's end of the month, but I think they have to have it in with so many days before that, right?
Because there has to be a public notice of, so there has to be 14
So
days.
May, possibly he could do it again in May.
Yes.
And would the planning commission come to a different decision? Or will we have a text amendment in place to alleviate?
No,
I guess,
the
concerns?
planning commission could pass it the verbatim as they did this time. And if they did, you would simply have more time to have a rehearing if they didn't address your concerns. But I think your conversation tonight has provided some clarity on what you would expect additional conditions to be.
Well, do we
As a
need to go ahead?
developer, I'm sure I'm going to listen to this tape because I just got turned down. Could the developer approach staff to self-impose some conditions from listening to this conversation?
He would have to withdraw and,
They would,
Let the lawyers
if, there cannot be conditions added to the zone change at this time without a rehearing. They could tender some agreement, but it would be separate and distinct from the zone change process.
so do we need to go ahead and schedule a rehearing? And then possibly in the meantime, they can withdraw? And we would rehear, or we would revisit it?
I'm going to have to I'm going to have to specifically count the dates on the calendar because I do not know that a rehearing is feasible. I mean, and I can do that. Are we taking an executive session tonight?
Yes.
Then I can take the time to actually point my finger on the calendar to actually calculate it. In the event that it can't be had legally, then you would have to simply deny it if it was not going to be withdrawn. But I could also call counsel for the applicant and see his
Is there
take.
any way, I'm going down for the third time here. So would there be any way that they could come in with an agreement and bond it in somehow? Would that make a difference or not?
And I'm flying off the cuff here too.
You are.
They could potentially submit some type of documentation to the city saying that we will not submit a site plan that doesn't achieve X, Y, and Z. And then Planning Commission and Technical Review, they could incorporate those at that time, but it would be separate and distinct from the zone change. The lane would still be changed to light industrial without the conditions that you prescribe. And in the event that the project did not come to fruition, they would not be tied to it.
I've spent too much time on this one project. Whole damn blasted weekend.
Okay.
Shouldn't be that way.
So you're going to get back to us?
You know,
I will.
you're right. I mean, the fact
Shouldn't be that way,
the
yeah.
fact that we have now allowed this process, the fact that this process has pushed this body to the finish line, almost. You know, our message to planning and zoning is, get your minutes, get them done, and let us look at this stuff earlier.
And Mr. Mayor, I think it's going to be really important to me as a commissioner to not let 2021 pass me by without us sitting down and looking at planning and zoning regs. Because, you know, we just passed them, but it's very obvious some things in there that
Well, obviously,
we
there
thought
are.
we thought we knew, but we did not know. And
There's,
this is-
obviously, there's issues with the process, and since
That's
we
just-
really don't do this very often,
Yeah. Well, and
I would appreciate some sort of review and, review of the process and better minutes from planning and zoning.
well, that's all a part of
and-
that workshop to me. I
Yeah.
just, we got to get something done.
Well, and in fairness too, I mean, what the rewriting of the planning and zoning ordinance was a monumental
Yes.
task.
That's right.
Our prior ordinance was a wreck. And no one ever knew what the current version was, and you had to look at so many supplements, and unless you were like ingrained and, had been on the wall for all of it, then you wouldn't have known where to go and how. So, and my recollection of the discussion was, this is a whole lot better than what we have. And just like trying out a new car, there's things you like and probably things you don't like, but with the knowledge that that's why you amend things. We amend our ordinances every year in a variety of ways. And there's certain things about the new ordinance that are great. Its organization is wonderful. And there are particular items that need to be addressed, and you knew they needed to be addressed. But in effort to get something forward, it was passed, and with the understanding that it would be amended, just like any other ordinance always is. I mean, the law provides for text amendments for that precise reason, and that's what you're about to probably undertake to a degree. And that's appropriate and necessary from time to time.
I feel like, and this has kind of come out more in this particular instance, is we were too far one way, and now we're a little too far the other way. So we need to find something in the middle that everyone's comfortable with, and that is a good process.
Yeah, planning and zoning gets confused too when I'm sitting here thinking about it for one developer that's in front of you. And, we end up looking at this one thing and trying, but your planning and zoning ordinance, your comp plan is all really designed by the entire community with feedback from public hearings to say, this is how we want our town to grow. This is what we want that growth to look like. This is the direction that we see growth happening because of infrastructure, because of X and Y. And sometimes planning and zoning is designed for the greater good, not necessarily for that individual developer. And a lot of times we look at that the opposite. And I think it's easy to get at, well, but it's really, it's designed for the opposite, but also to protect that developer's investment so that they know what they're getting, and so that they know when they invest money in a community, what their neighbors will be held to, the standards. And so that's a lot of times distorted because we tend to see discussions around personalities, or one person, or a plan, or a use, and sometimes it's probably too detailed.
It's easy to get tunnel vision when you're talking about one project in one area. When we every time we do this, we need to look over the whole plan and what the ripple effect is from these zone changes. But you're right, it's very difficult to look at the whole plan and have a 20,000-foot view when you're talking about something very specific.
Can we
All
move
right.
to the next agenda
Yeah.
item, please?
Item 16 is ordinance number 1962, and this is the Economic Development Authority interlocal agreement. Do I hear a motion for the first reading?
Prior to that motion, I would ask that we kind of leave our normal process to the side for a second, because there needs to be one mention here. The composition of the proposed board fluctuated in back and forth as negotiations between city and county were transpiring, and upon a final review, it's clear that the law indicates that you have to have at least 6 members on the board. What was agreed upon in conversations with the fiscal court was a 5-member board. And so what you passed last time needs revision. So if you remember the last meeting, you passed the first reading of the ordinance, which had 5 members. And that was the county judge executive, 1 magistrate, the city manager, and 1 member of the Board of Commissioners, and then an at-large chair that was mutually agreed upon by the court and the commission. That 5-member board needs to be expanded to allow 1 or 2 more members, and needs to have it designated to your liking. So the ordinance that is before you is what you passed last time, but is out of compliance with the law because we need at least 1 more member. And so I would like your input to that discussion, or a motion on who or what to include. So you could have a first reading of something with the revision that so-and-so be added to have the board of 6 or 7.
Yeah, we're going to need to have some time to talk to our counterparts at the county.
Well, but our
And
discussion,
amongst ourselves.
but our discussion, I believe you weren't here. This was changed from the mayor and a commissioner to the city manager and a commissioner. And I don't think the city manager needs to be a voting member of this body in this case. And I think our appointments should be mayor and a commissioner. And city manager, in this case, should be, the role should be staff support.
Ex officio. And
But that's not even ex officio. He should just be staff.
as long as he's there.
I disagree with that, but that's okay. I think that our equivalent with the county is our city manager, is our equivalent with the county judge executive.
Yeah.
And I think anything that, any commissioner or anything that happens, we're going to have to say, Yep, we gotta check with Earl. We gotta check with our city manager. I'd rather him be there in the front as a voting member. I just think that makes sense to me.
Earl and I had this conversation, so I'm okay, I'm comfortable saying it. My concern with that is Earl is not an elected official. Earl works for the commission. And to me, the people who need to be making these significant decisions need to represent the electoral body. Just my personal, love you, Earl, but that's just my personal opinion. You're gonna be there anyway. But I think you gotta, that's what elections are for. We're here to represent our constituents in expenditure items, big expenditure items.
But you need one more member. So if you're going to have one more and the county's going to have one more, I don't know that you need further conversations with the county in order to allow us to progress the situation. You just need to designate who the third person is going to be.
I see the fiscal court, it says will appoint one non-governmental individual, so that's not an elected person either, right? So I guess that would be two not elected people.
So did they make changes to this and send it
And I would make some
back?
argument on that, too.
Yeah.
No,
I agree.
they have tabled it, waiting your response.
So they did not make any changes?
No, we talked about what needed to be addressed, and they would select an additional member, and we would select an additional member, and I would make the revision and submit it to them.
So it's a 7-member board.
Unless you had mutual agreement to just add one person or one position.
Well, we talked about, in other EDAs, they have the, in our case, we ought to consider the chair of the EDP. In this case, it would be Marty Gibson.
As a city rep, did you say?
No, that would just be one position if you did it like that. And then you would have a 6-member board.
Oh. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Mayor?
I'm just trying to find
I don't have a problem with that.
a body that, is very much invested in this process. And then when I say this process, I'm speaking of economic development in big ways.
I would prefer a 7-member board, and I can lend my support to the mayor and one commissioner being 2 of our members. The third member, I'm open to suggestions, but I think if the city has 3, the county has 3, then there's one joint appointment. And your recommendation might be a good position for the joint appointment. Give us 7.
The joint appointment is to who serves as the chair.
Yeah, that wouldn't work then. Yeah, that wouldn't work then.
So I think you either each get 3 and you have one joint,
Yeah.
or you each have
Two.
who we said before, or you each get 2, plus a chair that you jointly appoint, and then another position, that you would jointly agree upon, like if you chose the chair of the EDP, or the chair of the EDP.
Yeah, it's a positional appointment that may changes, the name on the position changes. So if you added that 1 and the county agreed to that, then that would be 6, and that would be sufficient. But it would be an even number board, which we would prefer you to have an odd number board, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about the chair of EDP also being a voting member of the EDA. Would that present some sort of conflict? Possibly?
I don't think so, no.
I just don't want to put anyone in a conflicting position, I guess.
Could we have
What
the
if-
mayor and the city commissioner and a community member for the three from the city, and then one joint?
That's what I was going to suggest, was we each have a member at large
Yeah.
from the
Could be a
community.
voting member, but.
And we can always change, if that doesn't work, not we, but if this EDA, when this is formed and they get in there and it's not quite right, they can come back to us and say, okay, this is not quite what we needed, and we can switch it, we can change it.
Now, the EDA the function is to buy land and sell land, correct?
Well, right, to buy land to aid in development.
Right. I still think the city manager needs to be in that group.
Well, he will be in that group.
No, he needs to be a voting member of that group, in my opinion.
I mean, if you decide otherwise, it's at your leisure, but that would be a policy decision, but there would be nothing certainly unethical or inappropriate for your chief administrative officer to serve in that capacity for the city. I mean, if you think so on a personal level, that's fine. But I'm saying from a legal or ethical standpoint, there would be no conflict whatsoever in that.
The direction tonight is, I would like to move that we agree to a 7-member EDA, with the city having 3, the county having 3, and we have 1 joint, and 2 of the 3 city members be the mayor and 1 commissioner. The third one to be determined at a later date. That gives you something to take back to the guys.
Well,
Was that a motion?
we can't, I appreciate the effort, but at the same time, that doesn't move our conversation along, because what is before us requires 2 readings. And so what we're requesting is to have a first reading tonight so that we can actually form the entity in time for your budget season that can be funded. And absent action, we can't do that.
But does this ordinance address the 6-member board?
Yes.
The original one said 5. This one
That's
says
right,
6.
because I can't amend it until you tell me to amend it. So I'm asking you to have a first reading of the ordinance before you with the amendment that whatever you agree upon
Okay.
here tonight.
Okay.
I would prefer 7-member board, just to have an odd number.
Okay?
Let me offer.
That makes sense.
Let's go with it. Let's go with the 6, with the idea of putting a 7 on it. I mean, I agree with you, but to sit here and figure out who that's going to be or how that's going to be, let's get this off the ground, and then we can amend this after everybody's had a little chance to think it through.
So to be clear, what is before you is, there are 5 members currently. So what you're saying, and the 5 members that are currently as written are the city manager, a member of the Board of Commissioners, the judge executive, and a magistrate, an at-large member of the community to serve as the chair, and the the chair of the Economic Development Partnership. Those are your 6 members as listed now.
The mayor has 1 commission. Am I using the wrong copy?
Well, but
I know.
yes, because you revised it at your last meeting to include, to be the city, replace the mayor with the city manager.
Okay,
And that was your first reading.
okay.
Is everyone in agreement that the city manager is a voting member? Because that's not what,
I struggle with that,
I struggle with it too.
just based on the optics and the principle.
I don't understand that. Personally, I think the optics are perfect, personally, but.
Well, he's going to be there anyway.
Well, and let me say this, the mayor could still be
I
a
wouldn't
voting
mind having the
member.
mayor and the city manager on it.
Oh, no, I can't. I don't want to be with him.
What?
No, I'm kidding.
What do you say?
You could do that. You could designate the mayor and the city manager.
Because he's another commissioner.
The purpose in saying a member from the Board of Commissioners was to allow flexibility, and in some commissions, the mayor may be that best individual. However, if the mayor felt that another commissioner may be better equipped to serve in that role, they gave you flexibility. However, if you don't want to have that, then it's fine.
Well, I think as the mayor, sometimes you just get certain perks.
Well, some
Or
mayors would see that as a
obligations.
perk and some wouldn't.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, we've had
Another
mayors
meeting.
before that would like to serve in that role. I'm just speaking, I mean, honestly, there have been some mayors who probably would have preferred not to be on a board like that, and that's okay.
But they could, but it also usually says mayor or designee, does it not? Or are we not going to put that in here?
You can if you want to, but the whole point of it, I thought, was to be a decision by the Board of Commissioners as opposed to just being a designated individual by the mayor.
Can I withdraw my motion? Didn't get a second, did
You didn't
No.
get a second,
All
'cause
right.
What was the
I move
motion?
that we take a 5-minute recess.
That sounds really nice.
For person.
I'll
for
second
personal
that.
affairs?
I'll take that.
Need to go.
I don't make a motion to adjourn. We can get in.
Yeah, I seconded it.
Yeah, I think you got a third too, so.
Yeah. Okay, 5 minutes.
Motion to come back into regular session. Well, no, not even that. We have a motion just to come back and continue
motion to
our
come
regular
back.
session.
I will second that.
All right.
We have a motion, Commissioner Terry, Commissioner Cardle, I believe, seconded that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. We will continue this discussion. Now, I don't know if Stephen needs to be here to hear a proposal or not.
No, go ahead.
All right, let me try this to get us to 7 folks.
All right.
Understanding I've been quiet because you're talking about me, and so I'm more than willing to talk about it. So
We're
we'll just
talking
go.
about you in front of me.
Since he's not here, we'll be happy to talk about it. Go ahead.
So if you can picture a chair and then come down to county judge and the mayor, magistrate and the city manager, and the county gets a designee of their choice, we get a designee of our choice. That's 7.
So you're talking about and to be clear, you're talking about 7-member board,
Yes, sir.
joint appointed
Chair.
chair. You're talking about the county judge and the mayor. You're talking about a magistrate and the city manager. You're talking about a city appointee and a county appointee.
Right.
To be determined by the full board,
Right.
right?
Is that a motion?
Which it could be, that could be a city commissioner.
I'll let you make it.
Right.
No, go ahead. That sounded like a motion to me. I'll second that.
I make the motion that we have 7 members, a 7-member board composed of the chair, county judge executive, magistrate, county designee, mayor, city manager, and city designee. That's my motion. Thank you, Commissioner Cardle, for seconding. Is there any
Call for the
discussion? Question been called? Everybody good with that? All in favor?
Can I say one thing?
No.
No.
The reason I'm struggling with this is because I'm still thinking about who we have serving on the current EDP. So I think that's why I'm struggling, is because this affects who and how our designees serve on EDP.
Can't be on both, is what you're thinking?
Right now, they're going to be on both, and technically, we have an open seat on EDP, and the city manager and the mayor both are already serving on the EDP, and are they going to serve both? And we need someone, a third person on the EDP.
Do
Well-
they vote? You vote? Okay.
Yeah, I resigned my appointment in September, and we've been with an open seat on EDP since September. And so, well, I mean, and so we have to think about that, like, you know. And the city manager.
Yeah,
I think it would work.
yeah. I don't have a
Did we
problem with
vote
it.
on that?
But it just, no one has said that, so I just wanted to put it
It's
out
okay.
there that
Call for the
that
question.
this is what we're doing.
Okay.
You can vote on that. We can take that to the county, right?
Okay.
Right.
And as that plays out, if they agree in principle, then we can correct the interlocal agreement and make those administrative corrections and then bring that back to you for approval and acceptance.
The question's been called. Are we ready for a vote?
Yes, I will vote.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All right, Mr. Coffey, city manager report.
3 things. One, we'll mention, Ashley shared with me before the meeting that we have rescheduled the auction for the surplus property at Public Works that was delayed last year because of COVID for the 15th of May. 8:30 a.m. is when the doors open, and the auction will start promptly at 9:30.
At where? Or is it online?
It's at the Public Works building,
It's a live auction.
live auction, yeah.
So you're opening the doors at 8:30 and starting the auction at 9:30.
That is correct. We are also scheduling for the 21st a retreat with the commission, led by a third party, not me, not the city clerk, and to interact. We tried to do it last year with Ms. Franks, and it didn't really go. Staff kind of took it over, and so it's intended to be a workshop for you guys to interact with each other and to talk directly with each other. And so right now, that's scheduled over lunch on the 21st, 11:30 to 1. It'll be a short meeting, hour and a half,
21st of,
this month.
Do we, are you feeding us, or do we pack our lunch?
There will be lunch.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
You think we can get something done from 11:30 to 1?
That's the plan, and that's your moderator is organizing the meeting and organizing your all's interaction.
Good luck. Well,
This is sort of a team building.
It's a team building
Team building
exercise.
idea.
That's exactly
Well,
correct. I
you know
couldn't think
what,
of that word. That's correct.
I have felt, the four of us have been together for several years. And I think it's incumbent upon us to get to know Jenny and Jenny get to know us in a setting that's beyond this, to where we can just talk and learn about each other.
just be careful what you ask for, huh?
That's right. That's right.
The action, what's the word, the ordinance that came out of the covenant of courtesy came out of the original one. And we've not seen that in a long time. Some of you may recall that.
Yes.
Denise, Miss Terry did and brought it to our attention and reminded us of it. But, so there's a lot of good that can come out of it, and certainly it can be useful. So we just wanted to remind you of that date and time. Also, we're going to be talking about on the 26th, hopefully some big news. We've been in some recent discussions with Center College. We anticipate, some of you are aware that they've had a campus master plan they've been working on for a number of years. The most recent expansion was the improvements that you've seen on Walnut, and then the residence hall on the north side of campus where the old soccer field used to be. They've upgraded athletic facilities on the south side where the soccer facility is now. And so they are making a push for the next phase of their campus master plan. We would expect that to come forward around the 26th. They're talking about bond issuance potentially for that. We won't speculate on what the final number will be. We do anticipate it being large, but they will be asking, or at least it appears that they will be asking that the city provide or become the conduit for those bonds like we have done a couple of different times in the past. You've also done it for example, DCA, when they had their expansion of their campus.
Just so you know that the project you're referencing has been announced in the newspaper.
Yes,
Right, it's out there. Okay.
yeah. And so we just want to make sure that that's on your radar, that you are anticipating action. You're anticipating action on serving as the conduit for the bond issue. Also, when we look at development on the south side, we have had a history of right-of-way changes on the south side where there are old and abandoned right-of-ways in there. There is also some right-of-ways that can be improved, the connectivity. So we do anticipate some requests for right-of-way changes in that area. We will wait to see what those finally are until they provide another layer of details to us and make sure that that's what they want. And then we'll bring that to you on the 26th as well.
And on the 22nd, there's a meeting for agency presentations.
Community agencies, that's correct.
I will not be at that meeting.
Anything else, sir?
That's all I have.
Okay. We'll open up the floor to hear the public. If the public has anything that we've not addressed thus far, the floor is open.
There are no comments.
Commissioner comments. Yes, sir.
Since we had several proclamations today, I didn't really bring this one up, but this is also Autism Awareness Month. 1 in 68 kids have or will be diagnosed with autism in the next year. And, you know, the awareness and the therapies have improved, but it'll continue to be critical in our educational process and healthcare as we go forward. So just wanted to bring that up.
Good point.
Earth Day is April 22nd also. I believe there is an activity planned.
I'll plant you.
You're gonna plant me.
Do you know if they're going to do the bike ride that year?
I don't know. You
There's a
mentioned
Clark-
something
there's a
earlier.
Clark's Run meeting at 4 o'clock on Earth Day.
That's on
Wednesday?
Thursday.
Thursday?
Thursday, 4 o'clock.
They're gonna have some seeking input about what to do about Clark's Run. But that is Earth Day.
But that's just a meeting. That's not necessarily Earth Day activities. Are we
Yeah,
aware of
yeah.
any Earth Day activities?
No, it came from the
I am
committee.
out of the loop, and I will get in the loop and let you all know.
Okay.
Normally, there's a fairly extensive effort, and I am of no help in trying to describe what that is, to be honest right now.
Well, we could find that out. That'd be good.
Any other comments?
I had two. First one, I was going to say last meeting, but you weren't here, but I wanted to thank Mike for a very touching and transparent article in the Advocate Messenger, just to bring awareness about suicide prevention and mental health, which is very important and probably touches all of us in some way. And that was really, really touching. And then second, also in the paper, and the center newsletter, JH and his better half, Artie. Center College has a new Atkins Scholars Program to promote equity. I think I had a little bit of note about it. They're going to help the scholars at Center prepare for a lifetime of active leadership to promote an equitable society, and go on and use it in their professional careers as well. And that's just very neat. I really appreciate Center College too for always being so proactive with equity, anti-racism, all those type of things. So anyway.
Thank you.
Well deserved, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anything else? We'll move right on into item 18, payment of the bills. Chair will entertain a motion at your convenience.
I'll move to pay the bills as presented.
I'll second that. And
We
the
have a
amount,
motion by Commissioner Atkins, second by Commissioner Terry. Is there an amount you want to add to that?
the amount is $1,286,535.42.
Is that, do you agree with that, Commissioner Atkins?
Good job with your numbers.
Ask Ailey.
Item 18. You good with that?
Yes, sir.
We're in discussion, if there is any. No discussion, Chair will call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 19 is resolution number 2021-04-12-03. This is a grant award acceptance. Mr. Morgan, the floor is yours.
He is not here. We are carrying this for him. We applied for a land and water grant. The Parks Department, the Kentucky Department of Local Government has agreed to granting the city that grant, and you have in front of you the conditions. We're asking you to accept the grant as presented.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2021-04-1203, the LWCF Grant Award Acceptance, $250,000.
The grant is for $125,000. There's a local match.
For 125.
Yep.
Okay.
The project will be the total.
Wow, that's great.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Atkins, second by Commissioner Terry. Comments? Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item number 20 is resolution number 2021-04-12-04, Kentucky League of Cities Safety Grant Application. Chief Dolan.
Yes, sir. Mayor, Commissioners, we're asking for approval of the KLC Safety Grant. This is a grant that we apply for and receive yearly. It's upwards of $3,000. It's a 50-50 match as well. This is usually the grant that we utilize to replenish our traffic safety equipment, such as traffic cones and personal protective equipment as well.
Do I hear a motion?
I move for approval of Resolution 2021-04-12-04.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Cottle. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. I believe we have need for an executive session. Under what grounds, Counselor?
Prior to that discussion, and City Manager, I can't remember the topics of executive session, so if you'll remind me.
Personnel,
Okay.
hiring.
A personnel matter, so KRS 618101F, please. But prior to that, I did want to circle back around to
Item 15.
Item 15, thank you, the zone change on Lancaster Road. I was able during the break or the recess to discuss the matter with council, and council reiterated to me that when I discussed the condition that the city was concerned with, said that ironically, they engaged Kendall Wise to develop the site plan, and the site plan includes the extension of water and sewer to the property, even though the Rick houses don't necessarily need it, that it is included in their site plan that is ready to be submitted upon the approval of the zone change. And they reiterate the fact that they desire to commence construction May 1st. They say they have their crew ready, their engineering is ready. So I just wanted to relay that to you. If the condition that you had solely was for the extension of water and sewer, they said they were given the impression that that would be a technical checklist item upon site plan review, and so didn't feel that it was necessary to have a rehearing or withdraw their application simply to add something that is already included on their site plan. I said I would relay that message to you in the event that that changes any of your minds, or someone else would like to make a motion for a first reading on that ordinance that was presented. If that does change things, then now would be an appropriate time to do so. If not, you can let it lie.
I'm going to make the motion.
Okay.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
What's the motion, Commissioner?
What you said, Stephen, that,
That's the way to do it.
A motion to approve the ordinance?
Yes.
Does that, got to get a second first.
Were you a second?
Does there have to be an addition, anything else you need on that? Actually, seriously, just a motion to approve?
No, it'd be a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance number 1860, excuse me,
with the knowledge of they have
1963,
this other-
with that knowledge that we just, with that representation that council just made.
How can you do that if we've already, how can you go back to that ordinance if it's already been voted down? Doesn't it have to be a new ordinance?
No.
Okay.
Well, I'll second.
Okay, we're in discussion.
What is
It's basically a reconsideration, Mayor, is the technical term. It'd be a reconsideration of that ordinance, 1963.
What does that do for staff concerns? Commission concerns as well, I guess.
I'll let the city manager address that as far as water and sewer is concerned.
Well, you know, they're indicating that their site plan has those things fully evaluated and fully considered. So you can accept that and move forward and instruct staff to clean up or continue down the road of evaluating a text amendment to propose improvements to our process, or you can ignore that and continue down the road you were on before, I guess. How that affects staff is that just confirms for staff, it is your opinion that we look for those things in the site plan and that we are, as staff, we feel obligated to make sure they're there before we would sign off on anything. We would normally, but, you know, it's, again, like we've said before, there are conditions on a zone change because they're easier to enforce and easier to, that's your all's direct input in those things, right? That's when you all have the say as the highest ranking body on the matter. Certainly, staff will follow that lead, though.
Yeah, my question was, are there other concerns besides just the water and sewer?
I'm concerned about what Counselor Dexter brought up, in that if you change the zone on this 30 acres, then that the development of that does not have to be rick houses. It can be open-ended as long as it's light industrial, correct?
Well, it is accessory uses to the distillery. I think that condition was placed on there. So it would have to be distillery operations. I think
Okay.
ancillary distillery operations or something
Yeah, something like that.
was already
to
in there,
that
right?
degree.
I mean, what was relayed to me was that water and sewer was the main, really the main issue. That was what was relayed to me. So,
From staff?
Traffic, is that going to be at the technical review? Traffic count?
well, it's below 500, so it's already, at least for Rick House.
But
What-
they can put it into a full distillery operation
But what
without
they're
a
saying
traffic
is they have a
study.
site plan that has it for rick houses only.
I don't think water and sewer were the only concerns.
Well,
I'm just gonna
What
say
are
that.
the other concerns, is what I'm trying to get at? Are there other concerns? I would think?
Yeah, well, it's really, it's on the developer, I get that, but the site that is being proposed is very much karst topography. And underneath all that is a honeycomb of limestone. And I do think you have to be cautious of rick houses that do catch fire. We've seen that numerous times in Nelson County. And
Well,
that's-
now I do want us
So I
to,
don't know how they're going to deal with that. It's not our concern, I guess.
They will, I actually spoke to somebody, they will, because I saw the geography, I looked it up with my phone, and I
Right.
saw all these sinkholes. And, yeah, so they will consult a geographical engineer if that is necessary, if they go near to the mouth of a sinkhole, if that makes you feel better. But it's an
Yeah.
engineering issue that is looked at
Right.
and has been, and Kendall's very, very good.
Yeah.
We're not engineers.
No.
So.
and I'll say this, when we look at zone changes, again, we need to look at them. Is the area, the acreage specified an appropriate use for light industrial, specifically an accessory distillery use? And if so, with adequate water and sewer, then the conditions have to be related to that use. They can't be anything other than what, if it's an appropriate industrial, light industrial use or not. As far as whether it meets the geotechnical, that's really upon whoever, the risk that's going to be undertaken by anyone who desires to develop it.
Well, under the guidance, it says, proposals for industrial development larger than 20 acres should be accompanied by a detailed geologic analysis to determine the carrying capacity of the underlying soils with respect to the possibility of accidental spills of hazardous materials and impacts on groundwater. This analysis should assess the impacts of the proposed development and identify steps to be considered and taken to mitigate any adverse impacts. Now, this is also under the guidance for industrial development. I guess I feel like these should be conditions that everyone should have to meet.
And they would be looked at site plan for sure, 100%,
But where's the commitment?
right?
Or they're
Well,
going to be
they're-
looked at, but who makes them do this?
The engineering, and if the planning commission adds more conditions.
If,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just not comfortable with that. I think, I'm just not comfortable with it.
And so the way for you to get comfortable is to put those conditions in.
Way for me to get comfortable with it is to have,
But we don't
More
want to
conditions.
micromanage zone changes either. So, something.
no, it's not micromanaging. It's a matter of everyone should have to meet the same minimum conditions.
Which are?
And that's not happening. That's not happening on any of our zone changes. And so then that's where the inconsistencies come in.
Can I just call for the question?
Yes, you can.
Sure.
I'm gonna do like I did before.
Yes.
All in favor of calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Question is called. We're ready for.
Madam Clerk, would you read the ordinance into the record, please, prior to the vote? Roll call.
As a first reading again.
It is.
Keep, young lady.
This is the first reading of ordinance number 1963, an ordinance changing the zone from AG Agriculture and HB Highway Business to LI Light Industrial for approximately 30.765 acres, more or less of real property located at 1695 Lancaster Road in the city of Danville. Commissioner Terry?
No.
Mayor Paris?
No.
Commissioner Holland?
Yes.
Commissioner Atkins?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Cottle?
Yes.
All right, we're ready to go into executive session.
Yes, under personnel, please.
Somebody read that, please.
New girl.
I got two.
They should come from the other end
I will
tonight.
make a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel matters pursuant to KRS 61.8101F.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. We are in executive session. back into regular session.
And
So
I make a
moved.
motion, we go back in executive session?
Made, is there a second?
Second?
Ashley.
Made and seconded, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. We're in a regular session. Mr. Coffee.
Thank you, Mayor Commissioners. We would ask that you accept the resignation of Gabe Heatherly from the Fire Department, the resignation of Cindy Childers from 911, and David Lewis as a police officer.
I
Do I
make
hear
a
a
motion.
motion?
I make a motion to accept all three resignations with some regrets.
Do I hear a
Second.
second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Continue, sir.
Staff is recommending the hiring of Chastity Shirley to the position of police officer with 15 years of experience.
So moved.
Second?
Motion is made and
Gladly.
seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Staff is recommending that for the hiring of Nathan Looney to the position of the firefighter, also with 17 years of experience.
So moved.
Motion is made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, ma'am. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Staff is recommending the promotion of Mike Mulholland to the position of deputy fire chief. Been with the city a long time, 21 years.
So moved.
Second?
Motion is made. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, sir. Discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Staff is recommending the promotion of Doug Holt to the position of Assistant Public Works Director. Been with the city 6 years.
So moved.
Motion is made. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, ma'am. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Anything further?
No, sir. Thank you all.
I'd like to make a motion, we go back into executive session.
There he goes again.
That's going to die for lack of
You
second.
got that right.
I'm going to make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion been made to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Have a good evening.